We now begin our regularly scheduled programming. Hey everybody, this is Nick. I'm going to be your moderator today. If you would let me know on Edmodo if you guys can hear me and if you guys could see me, that would be fantastic. We'll get going in just a couple of minutes here. Make sure that everyone that wants to join us is here. There's an icebreaker question over on Edmodo right now, just asking what is your favorite part of the book. As a couple more people join us, I'll let you know what my favorite part is, and you can also let me know what your favorite part is over on Edmodo. So hope you guys have enjoyed the book so far. Hope you guys are enjoying your last week before you head back to school. Or if you go to charter, hope you're enjoying your first week of school. And we'll get going in just a couple of seconds here. Let's see, looks like we still have 0 viewers at the moment, but that's okay. If we don't have anyone join us today, I'll just talk at you guys for a little while, and then you can watch the archive a little bit later. So if you're watching this archive later from when I'm filming it right now, hello, and thanks for watching. So let's see, it is just about 4 o'clock right now, and we'll see if a couple people jump on in the next minute or two. While we're waiting for them, I figured I would tell you guys a little bit about my favorite parts of the book right now. I thought the fact that Chloe, one of the people from the Academy of Scholastic Distinction, wanted to make sure I got that right. The Academy of Scholastic Distinction. Chloe wears a badge that says, "That's okay, Pluto. I'm not a planet either." And I thought that was hilarious. If you guys have ever seen the TV show Psych, one of the characters on there is Gus. He's the sidekick of the main character, Sean. And Gus is hilarious. He is a nerd, and he's also really smart. And so something that Gus always says when as a pickup line is, "You hear about Pluto? That's messed up." So anytime that I see something about Pluto, it makes me laugh. So that was one of my favorite parts of the book. Another one of my favorite parts was on page 65, and one of the teachers is talking about Donovan, and they're saying that maybe his gift is that he has a photographic memory. And the teacher comments on how he couldn't even remember what school he went to before, probably because Donovan was trying to not incriminate himself on what happened there. But the teacher says, if that's a photographic memory, he left the lens cap on. And I was practically rolling in the restaurant while I was reading the book at that point. Thought it was super funny. So if you guys are over on Edmodo right now, if you want to let me know what your favorite part of the book has been so far, please do that. I'm going to jump over to Edmodo at the moment. Looks like Jackie can see. I appreciate that. And it looks like Zach is saying, the part when he hit the statue's rear with a stick and the globe crashes into the gym. Zach, that was something that was hilarious. It was something that I also wasn't expecting, so I was definitely laughing about that as well. Zach and Megan, thank you for letting me know that you can hear me. I appreciate that. And Nicole, hello to you. And it looks like Karen is also joining us today. Hello, Miss Karen. Karen, we're actually in the same office, so Karen is in the background right now. So it's fun to see her comments on Edmodo, but then know that she's sitting right across from me. It's kind of an odd experience, but it's kind of fun. So let's see what we got going here. Excellent. If anyone else would like to comment on what their favorite part of the book has been so far, please feel free to do that. We are about 4:03, so I think we're going to jump in. Please feel free to respond to that. While I kind of wanted to do a transition back and forth today between letting you guys know a little bit more about the author of our book. The author is Gordon Korman, and also asking a few questions about the book. So on the GordonKorman.com is a website that I found, information about the author, obviously, and he had a frequently asked questions that he gets pretty much everywhere that he goes. And so I wanted to share a couple of those things today, and I also wanted to share a couple of the things that Gordon Korman shares about himself on his website. So as it turns out, Gordon Korman has been writing novels since he was in 9th grade. when he entered a contest, a Scholastic contest, when he was in 7th grade. And by 9th grade, Scholastic had actually published one of his novels. And I found that to be really impressive. There's a lot of authors that get started later. There are some authors that get started early in life. I thought it was really cool that Gordon Korman was one of those people that got started writing very, very early in his life. So let's see here. It says here on the website that he has written over 80-something books for kids and teens, which is obviously a prolific amount of literature that he's written. They say that his books have been translated into over 30 languages, and they've sold over 25 million copies worldwide. So I thought that was really cool as well. His first novel was called This Can't Be Happening at McDonald Hall. So that was the one that he actually started as that competition in 7th grade and then got published by Scholastic in 9th grade. Before we move into another question, I wanted to give you one of the frequently asked questions that Gordon Korman gets a lot. And one of those, the number 10 one he gets is, were you in the gifted program when you wrote your first book in 7th grade? He says, absolutely not. I was just as ungifted as Donovan Curtis. I wrote Ungifted to play around with the idea that there's a little bit of genius inside every kid, gifted program or no. Actually, This Can't Be Happening at McDonald High was kind of an accident. My English teacher was the track and field coach, and he just told us to write whatever we wanted for the rest of the year. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So right now, I think I want to go into some of the questions that I have for you guys. The first thing that I wanted to talk about is, have you guys noticed anything about the writing style of Ungifted? Have there been any books that you guys have read that are similar to the way that Gordon Korman is writing in Ungifted? Did it remind you of any of the other books that we've been reading for Newfangled? And if, Ms. Karen, if you wouldn't mind throwing that question up on Edmodo, that would be fantastic. Fantastic, thank you. If you guys wanted to respond to that, while I was reading Ungifted, it immediately made me think of Chomp, in the way that not necessarily in the way that the characters think about things, but in the way that the sentences were a little bit shorter, that the characters were asking a lot of questions. So I thought that those two books had some things that were similar. If you guys noticed a couple other things about the way that Ungifted was written, feel free to share those over on Edmodo. Another thing that I really appreciated about Ungifted and the way that it was written was that we're getting the story from multiple perspectives. I think that we're going to be getting a large part of the action from Donovan's perspective, but I also thought it was cool that we've gotten it from the Mr. Schultz over at the middle school. We're also getting it from the Mr. Osborne, or the Great and Powerful Oz, and we've also gotten it from Chloe's perspective. And I read another book by Gordon Korman called Schooled, and also in that book we bounce between multiple characters' perspectives, and I really like that way of writing. If you guys like that as well, let me know. I'm going to jump over to Edmodo right now and see if we have any comments on some of the questions that we have. If you guys have noticed anything about the writing style in Ungifted there. So a couple of those questions are up. Doesn't look like we have any responses yet, but that's totally fine. Feel free to keep listening to me babble at you guys while you're responding to those things. I think I'm going to jump back over to the questions and answers from Gordon Korman. This is number 9 from his website. Have you ever been hypnotized? No, but I have a close friend who's a licensed hypnotherapist, and he helped me a lot. For The Hypnotists, which I'm imagining is one of his books, I wanted to up the ante and create a true paranormal ability. But I've never done much with supernatural fantasy, so I don't have those tools. Where I do have experience is with research-based adventure series like Everest and Titanic. So I created my own concrete rules of hypnotism and substituted them for my research. And so he didn't have a lot of experience himself. And so he was using research on those things to still create a realistic story and a believable story. I just recently went to a conference with a whole bunch of other librarians. It was the Pacific Northwest Library Association Conference. And one of the authors that was there was named Roland Smith, who's also wrote a whole lot of literature for young adults. And he says that he spends the majority of his time as a writer just researching what he's writing about. That way he's able to create a believable story. And it seems that Gordon Korman also has that same concept of going into researching things, using his own experiences, obviously, but fluffing those things and making those things even more believable by researching them. Right now, I think I want to go back to another question that we might have here. On page 31, Chloe comments, hypothesis, being gifted is not a gift. A gift you get for nothing. This you have to pay for. What do you think she means by that? And that's a question that we want to throw up on Edmodo there and see what are your takes on that. Have there been times that you've been really good at something and you've seen that as being more of a problem than actually something that helps you? Do you think that being really talented at something would always be a good thing? Go ahead, feel free to let us know over on Edmodo what you think about that. I'm going to go back to Edmodo right now and see if we have a couple responses to some of the other questions that we have up there right now. Going to refresh the feed because it doesn't do that automatically sometimes. And let's see here. So one of the questions that we have up is, do you like Donovan so far? Do you agree with the choices that he's making? Megan says, I like Donovan so far, and I do not agree with the choices that he's making. And Zach agrees and gives 2 thumbs up to that response. Krista also has something to say. Krista says, I read a few books that alternated between first-person perspectives, but I particularly liked that it included the IQs of each character. And Krista, that was something else that I really appreciated. It lets us know a little bit more about each of the characters, lets us kind of frame them. But I also thought that was interesting that the book is kind of assuming that, you know what, yes, we all have different IQs, but we all have something to say. And that was something that I really appreciated about the book as well. I'm going to skip to a couple of the questions to one that I wrote a little bit later, kind of springboarding off of what you mentioned, Krista. And on page 71, the great and powerful Oz, Mr. Osborne comments, Donovan alone had managed to engage him. And he's talking about Donovan's way of engaging with Noah, who's one of the genius level people at this school. And he never smiled. He was always very in tune with himself and what he was focusing on. And yet Donovan had him almost rolling on the floor by watching just a couple simple YouTube videos. And so Oz comments, could that be a kind of giftedness in and of itself? And I'm wondering, Krista, if you think that that might be the reason that they're including the IQs on the beginning of each of those chapters there, that yes, we can be labeled by our IQs or labeled by who we are, but we might all have something to contribute. If you guys want to comment on that over on Edmodo, feel free. Looks like we have a couple other posts on Edmodo right now. Going to refresh that real fast. And Zach posted a question as well. He asked, who is your favorite character so far? And Zach and Megan both said that theirs is Tin Man. And I think I have to agree. I thought it was really cool that Donovan was, instead of objectifying it, he was kind of giving it a it was giving it kind of a personality by giving it a name, but also giving it a whole bunch of decals on the body of the robot, rather than it just being a whole bunch of gears and motors and hydraulics, which can be some of what those robots might be. And Megan commented that she thinks that Chloe is correct about the hypothesis of a name changing an it to a he. And do you think that Chloe was correct about that? And let's see here. I think at the moment we're about halfway through our chat. I think I want to share another one of the frequently asked questions from Gordon Korman's website. Number 8. Gordon Korman was asked, how much money do you make? And this is his response. You knew it was coming, the inevitable question. So let's get it out of the way. I earn less than LeBron James, but more than the French fry box unfolder at the local drive-thru. He says that he's kind of in that gray area in between there. Seems like a pretty big gray area, but I really appreciate that even on his biography, Gordon Korman is using humor to communicate with us. I think that's really cool. That's something that Gordon is actually going to mention a little bit later in his frequently asked questions as well. So at the moment right now, I think I'm going to share one more of Gordon Korman's frequently asked questions. Have you tried all the adventure activities you write about? And this is how he responds. I'm not a sailor, I'm not a scuba diver, or a high altitude mountaineer. And I certainly wasn't aboard the Titanic. Exactly how old do you think I am? It was in writing my adventures series that I discovered research, which is something that he mentioned earlier. Before that, I'd relied heavily on experience, since I was so close in age to my characters at the beginning of my career. Research is awesome because it replaces the experiences you don't have. And that's something that I've heard from a lot of the authors that I've had the pleasure of talking to or hearing at conferences, is that they use that research to fill in the experiences. That way they can write those novels that are believable, even if they haven't experienced those things that the characters are experiencing. Let's see if there's any more responses over on Edmodo right now. And it looks like right now, Krista has something to say about Chloe mentioning a name changes an it to a he. And Krista writes, definitely. If you humanize an object or project, people tend to sympathize with it and care more about it. And so that's something that Krista agrees with. And I think that I agree with that as well. And let's see here. We have another question that I wanted to ask you guys. On page 41, Noah comments, trying to control your own destiny. It's not just hard, it's impossible. Why do you think Noah would say that? Do you think that that might tie into what Chloe mentioned a little bit before about the hypothesis of being gifted is not a gift? A gift is something you get for nothing, and this is something that you have to pay for. Do you think that Noah might be commenting on that same kind of an idea that Chloe was getting at? If you do, feel free to chat on Edmodo regarding that particular idea. Right now, I think I'm going to share with you guys another one of the frequently asked questions from Gordon Korman. And number 6 is, what is your nickname? He comments, one of the reasons I wrote the 6th grade nickname game was that I hardly ever got cool nicknames as a kid. Gordy, Gordo, nothing too creative. But when I was in 6th grade, I was the G-Man, and I loved it. I've been waiting decades to get another nickname that good. For me personally, I don't have a lot of nicknames actually, unless you count the fact that my name is Nick, and so which might ultimately be the ultimate nickname. But do you guys have nicknames that your friends call you? Is it something that you go, oh man, they call me this nickname and that's really cool? Or is it something more of a, ugh, I hate it when they call me that? I think it's once again really cool that Gordon Korman appreciates the humor that his friends have for him. And let's see if there are any more responses over on Edmodo right now. I had a feeling that we might be a little bit slow this time around on Edmodo, as it is the first, it's that last week before we head back to school, and there's open houses and there's a whole bunch of different things going on. But if you're watching this archive a little bit later, thanks for watching it. Feel free to still be responding on Edmodo during the week to those that are on right now or those that are watching later. We always have room on Edmodo, and that's another reason that we have all of our responses and all of our questions on Edmodo. That way, if people aren't able to join us during our chats, you can always be responding during the week as well. So feel free to do that. Let's see here. So we asked the question, Donovan alone had managed to engage him. Could it be that kind of giftedness in and of itself? And Zach says it could be. And Megan says something similar, that it could be, it possibly might be the case. Do you think that being able to engage with people, whether that's through public speaking or whether that's through showing them something exciting, could that be a talent? Could that be, is it just a talent, or is it something that's even more than that? And I think that's something that Gordon Korman is going to get into as we continue going through the book. That idea of giftedness and not giftedness is something that has come up. And I'm wondering if that's going to be one of the themes that Gordon Korman is going to be weaving in and out throughout this book. So that might be something you might want to be looking for as you keep reading it. And let's see here. And Krista was commenting on Zach's question, who is your favorite character so far? And Krista comments, I feel like I can sympathize the most with Chloe, as she is slightly below my age. Needless to say, she's also a human. And that's a good point, Krista. I find that I myself am a big nerd. And so as I mentioned earlier, when Chloe, the character, has that button that says, it's okay, Pluto, I'm not a planet either, I found that really funny because a lot of those science jokes I find quite hilarious. And so I'm actually sympathizing and empathizing a lot with those characters that do kind of have those nerd references and can quote Star Wars or The Matrix or can quote these crazy things. I find that I can do that myself sometimes. Could I do those math problems that they were talking about? Absolutely not. And if I had to build my own robot, I'd be a little bit out of my league unless I was given quite a bit of instruction. But I'm having a really good time with the characters that are in here. And let's see here. Krista also had something else that she mentioned in response to is being gifted an actual gift. And Krista says, intelligence isn't a trait that is simply bestowed upon you. Often you have to work hard to gain and refine it, e.g. studying, note-taking, making well thought out decisions. Most skills are this way. They require a certain level of practice, a paid price. Krista, I think that is very astute. People can have a natural affinity or a natural talent toward doing one thing or doing another thing. But even with those talents, if you want to be the best, you have to be someone that has worked hard to attain those things. So there can be people that have a brain for math, but unless they're using that gift, it is going to be hard for them to excel in that area. So Krista, I think that is definitely a very good point. And let's see here. Looks like that's the majority of our banter over on Edmodo for the moment. It looks like we have about 7 minutes left. Zach mentioned that his nickname is Z-Man. So that's actually really cool, as Gordon's nickname was G-Man and Zach's was Z-Man. I like that. Megan says that her friend's nickname for her is Under Armour, which is kind of fun as well. Very cool. I think I'm going to go back to Gordon Korman and see if there's a couple of his frequently asked questions that we'd want to talk about. And number 5, what did you want to be before you became a writer? And Gordon Korman says, when I was 2 years old, I wanted to be a dog when I grew up. I don't actually remember this, but my parents tell me that I used to eat dinner under the table in preparation for this career. Good thing I wound up as a writer. I never could have gotten into the union. Let's see here. I think I might have had another question for you. And the question goes like this. On page 46, if you chuck a paper airplane at someone, they assume you did it for science. Where Donovan came from with the traditional middle school, if you threw a paper airplane, it was talking about how the bus driver would have held them all captive until they gave up the person that threw the paper airplane. While in this particular school, the culture is a little bit different. Instead of it being that you're immediately the bad guy, they assume that you did that for science. Now, obviously, with that particular culture, you could take advantage of that if you had the wrong attitude. But it seems like these students, instead of taking advantage of that, they actually thrive in that kind of an environment. So my question is, have you experienced a place that assumes the best of you rather than assuming that you've done something for these terrible reasons? Because I find that culture can be something that is unique. And I was wondering if that's something that you all have experienced, whether that's in school, whether that's with your friends, whether that's with a sports group or an extracurricular that you do. Let me know over on Edmodo. While you're responding to that question, I think those were the majority of the questions that I had for you. So I'm going to finish out our time today by going over the last couple frequently asked questions from Gordon Korman. Which book was the hardest to write? The Island trilogy was a real challenge for me because it was the first time I had to switch gears from comedy to action adventure. Here were 6 shipwrecked kids who were in real danger of dying every minute. That's not the time to be cracking jokes. So it's not humor that keeps the reader turning pages, it's suspense and fear. When you guys were reading the other books for Newfangled, or just reading books that you have read for your personal enjoyments, do you guys find that you enjoy the comedy books more, the action adventure books more? I find that I like that action adventure piece moving that story forward, but I also enjoy comedy when it's thrown in there in appropriate places. So a character that's a wisecracker, even though he's in these stressful situations, I find hilarious. I've also really been enjoying books like Chomp or books like Ungifted so far, where it really is just a comedy, and that's the genre of the book that we're reading. I haven't read so many books like that, and I'm really having a good time with it. Let's see here. Another question, what was it like writing the multi-author 39 Clues series? At first, I wasn't sure how I'd feel about sharing a series with other authors, but I love it. It's almost like having coworkers, something most writers don't get. It can be complicated at times, especially when you're writing one of the later books in a series. You have to be really careful that your details match the storyline that's happened so far. I actually think the multi-author style brings out the best in us writers. We all try to outdo each other, and that creates a series that's heart-stoppingly exciting from start to finish. And that competition, rearing for the other people to be doing well, I think is really cool. Number 2, we're almost getting to his number 1 question that he gets all the time. Number 2, Roland is asked, I'm sorry, not Roland, that's Roland Smith, another author. We're talking about Gordon Korman right now. And Gordon says, why is there a dog on the cover of the Swindle books? Covers are tricky, since you have to find a single image to represent an entire story. Swindle is about a group of kids who pull off a daring robbery to steal back $1 million baseball card they've been cheated out of. The scariest part of that is Luthor, a giant trained attack dog. He was a natural for the cover, and after that, he became kind of the spokes beast for the Swindle series. P.S. I never had dogs growing up, but Luthor has turned me into a total dog person. When I was writing Show Off, I researched all the breeds and even attended the Westminster Kennel Club dog show in New York City. I'm hooked. I'm going to take one last quick look over at Edmodo. Megan says that she enjoys action and adventure books the best. And Jackie says, I have so many nicknames that I can't write them all. Zach asked her, what is your favorite one? And we'll see if Jackie's able to respond there. Krista had an interesting response to the question about Noah and saying, trying to control your own destiny, it's not just hard, it's impossible. Krista says, Noah may be trying to break away from what others expect him to be. That is, an immensely intelligent yet socially inadequate student. It explains his cryptic response and his refusal to do the linear programming that comes so easily to him. And I think, once again, Krista, that is very astute. And I think that might be why Noah is having those problems and why Noah might be acting out in that way. Right now, I think I'm going to read the number one question that Gordon Korman gets, and I think we're going to be out of time. Gordon is asked, what is the answer to all of the world's problems? Come on, how can I know that? But since this is my top 10, I'll take a stab at it. Not all of my books are funny, but I do believe in the power of a good sense of humor. Although laughter might not solve anything, it sure makes the bad stuff a lot easier to take. So maybe the answer to all the world's problems is keep on laughing. With that, my friends, we are out of time. We've gone from 4 to 4:30. Thank you for joining me today. We will still be back on Edmodo and Google Hangouts on air next week from 4 to 4:30. If this is your first week of school, hope things have been going well. If next week is your first week of school, I hope you all have a great Labor Day. I hope that if your next week of school is, if next week is your first week, that you have a great week, and we will catch you guys next Thursday at 4:30. Thank you. We'll end at 4:30. We'll start at 4 o'clock, and I will catch you guys soon. Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.